From the Center for Agricultural Profitability at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, this is Nebraska Farmcast. I'm Ryan Evans, and today I am excited to be joined by Marilyn Schlake, a Rural Prosperity Nebraska Extension educator here at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. Marilyn recently wrote an insightful article titled Agriculture and Community Wellbeing, a review of 3 research studies, which sheds light on the dynamic relationship between agricultural producers and rural communities. Looking forward to hearing more about the relationship between Main Street and agriculture in rural communities right now. So thanks for joining me again, Marilyn.
Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate the opportunity.
So first, what motivated you to explore that relationship between agricultural operations and rural communities and well-being of those communities?
Well, honestly, Ryan, first of all, is personal curiosity. I work with rural communities, and I'm an actual ag producer with my husband as well. And I do a lot of volunteer in our communities, helping do fundraising, helping to build community amenities. And so I see how much I contribute to the community as an agricultural producer. But when I'm working in the communities, working with community leaders, I often have to remind them that ag producers are part of their community as well, and that they have impact on their community. They're attending the school with their children. They're attending the local faith community churches. They are going to the banks, to the co-op. They're contributing economically to that community. So why aren't they at the table? And then also when I was at Husker Harvest Days recently, talking to some producers, I got the sense of, I got a feeling from the producers and some of the comments that they made that they didn't see the value of them contributing to that community, other than just going to that community and participating as a retailer or as a consumer in that community. So I was just kind of going, why is there a disconnect between the two, and the understanding the importance of the ag community with the community that they live nearby?
That's so interesting. In your article, you looked at some studies from Germany, Australia, and here in the U.S. So what were some key similarities and differences that you found in that agricultural and community relationship across the countries?
Okay, the 3 different studies were looking at very similar components, looking at the ag producers and then their nearby community and what those impacts are on the community. The German study looked at the density of the resident farmers, those are living within or nearby the community, and compared that to the non-community residents. The Australian study studied the relationship between the farmers and their rural communities, and they looked specifically at the interactions between the 2 groups that helped maintain rural populations, services, the local economy, and the environment as well. And then in the American study, which was a little bit more in-depth, it looked at multiple variables, such as the farm size, and they measured that by acres and by sales, and farm ownership in relationship to community well-being. So each was a little bit different in their twist in the research, but it's all affecting or looking at the ag producers in their communities.
And speaking of this concept of farm density, you discuss this in your article. So how does the density of resident farmers within or nearby a community impact those perceptions and the well-being of non-farming community members?
This was taken from the German study, and they looked at how that farm density can positively influence the perceptions of the non-farming residents, basically towards the agriculture and their attachment to their own rural community. And they found that the social interaction of the producers in the community can help mitigate any positive and negative experiences those non-farming community residents may have had previously. And then it also helps mitigate the perceptions that they may have formed from social media, negative perceptions out there that maybe the farmers aren't doing environmental work. And so having that density of farmers in those relationships between those 2 groups helps to clear the air, let's put it that way, yeah. and say, farming is important, and then we're doing good things in the farming community.
And in the article, you acknowledge something that's probably not a surprise to many listeners, a significant shift in farm sizes and ownership structures over the years. So can you just talk more about this and then how these changes affect the economic and social fabric of rural communities?
Okay. In the research that was done in the United States by Park and Deller, they looked over the past 30 years as to what's been happening with the number of farmers and farm entities across the United States. And they saw almost a 20% decrease in the mid large size farms, those farms that are between the 50 to 999 acres. But they also found that those larger farms over 1,000 acres stayed pretty much the same over that time period. But the biggest growth was in those small farms, those farms that are under 50 acres. Comparing 1987, the farm population of those under the 50 acres was about 29%. In 2017, it had grown to almost 42% of all farms across the United States. So the researchers also looked at different types of commodities, and that same pattern was displayed across the United States. And so what they termed was the hollowing out of the mid-sized farms. And so they wanted to look at what are the structural changes, how is that impacting our rural communities? And they found that there was both positive and negative impacts. And they also looked at, when we talk about the community and that well-being, how that interaction, that impact is, they were specifically looking at age distribution, income levels, the economic diversity of the community, the social connectedness within the community, that sense of belonging with the community, and the employment levels of that community. So those are some terms that get defined within that community well-being.
And the article does suggest that both large and small farms contribute differently to community well-being. So could you just elaborate on those unique roles and impacts of the different farm sizes, perhaps what the studies found?
Yeah. What they found, if you have a higher concentration of the small farms around a community, there is a weak but negative association with their earnings per job, meaning that there is a decrease in their earnings per job. Many of these small farms may be classified as part-time farmers, and this group still had a positive association with the community well-being overall, though. But there was also a negative association with the home ownership rates and the business startup rates with these smaller communities if there's a larger concentration of those. With the farms that are larger, that have over the 500,000 sales, there was an association with higher earnings per job within the community, reduced financial stress within the community, and better overall health outcomes. However, on the flip side, they were also associated with higher poverty rates, lower home ownership rates, and lower rates of new business formations. So there is some inconsistencies across all of those different sizes of farm entities on the community. But one thing that they found that was very directly impacted to the community was the group that we would call absentee farmers, or those individuals that are living off the farm. And what they found is that share of the farmers that do not live on the farm, their earnings per job decline within the community, poverty rates increase, home ownership rates decline, and business startup rates also decline. So we have a lot more absentee farmers located around a community. There is going to be an impact on that community and the well-being of those citizens.
And based on your findings here, are there any strategies that you would recommend for communities to strengthen that bond between agricultural producers and the communities near where they live?
First, I would like to see them recognize the importance of the ag community to the well-being of their community and invite them in on those community discussions, because as you see, there are impacts that are occurring. And so they have an impact on the wages, on the homes that are available, the home rates, and just the well-being of the community. But also we have those small farmers that are out there also contributing to the economic welfare of the community. Even if they're part-time, they're bringing in supplemental income into the community. So they are also, a lot of them, connecting to the urban because they may be vegetable producers or fruit producers, and they're going into the urban areas, so bringing those monies back to the community as well. So it doesn't matter what size of agricultural producer you have in the area, to include them in the discussion and to look at when we are considering policy, not only from the local community, but also from the state and even nationally. Make sure that we are looking at both sectors. We're looking at the ag producers and the impacts on the community, and so both can grow.
Great. Last, I'm just curious from a personal standpoint, as you mentioned, you've kind of got your foot in both camps, and your reaction to some discussions at Husker Harvest Days with producers. You kind of sensed a disconnect there between farmers and their local communities. Did anything surprise you after you looked into this more and did this research now that you've written this article?
Yes, it did. I had this perception that as the farms get bigger and bigger, they're buying more product away from that local economy. So I was thinking that there was a greater negative association between the large farms and their community, and I was proven wrong. There are some positives there, and which is wonderful to see that the ag producers are an integral part of our rural landscape, and we need to make sure that we're recognizing that on the community level as well.
Great. Well, great stuff from Marilyn Schlake, an extension educator with Rural Prosperity Nebraska here at UNL. And you can read more about her findings in a Cornhusker Economics article. That's a series published weekly by our Department of Agricultural Economics here at UNL. And we have reposted it on our Center for Ag Profitability website as well at cap.unl.edu. And you can find that link in the podcast notes wherever you're listening to this. Thanks so much, Marilyn.
Thank you, Ryan.
Nebraska Farmcast is a production of the Center for Agricultural Profitability at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. For the latest research-based information and education resources to manage your farm or ranch operation, visit our website at cap.unl.edu. That's cap.unl.edu.